Hi, I'm Polly Hansen, a producer of Viewpoints Radio. In this podcast-exclusive episode, you'll get an inside look into my conversation with author Hayley Campbell, a journalist for the BBC. For her book, All the Living and the Dead, she shadowed several people who've made death their life's work. One such person is Mark Oliver, VP of Operations for a company called Kenyon, which identifies bodies after disasters like commercial airplane crashes and deadly tsunamis. From embalmers to homicide detectives to disaster cleanup crews, the number of people working in the death industry figures in the hundreds of thousands worldwide. And yet, these people and their jobs are virtually invisible. This podcast includes dialogue that didn't make it into the original segment, which aired back in February 2023. We start with Campbell reading from the introduction of her book. Here's an excerpt from our conversation.
On average, 6,324 people in the world die every hour. That's 151,776 every day, about 55.4 million a year. That's more than the population of Australia falling off the planet every 6 months. For most of those deaths in the Western world, there will be a phone call. Someone with a gurney will collect the body and transport it to the mortuary. If needed, another person will be called to clean the place where the body lay quietly decomposing until the neighbors complained, burning an outline into the mattress like a liquid victim of Pompeii. If there's no family, another person will be paid to clear the apartment of everything that once made up a lonely life. The shoes, the subscription magazines on the doormat, the piles of books that never got read after all, the food in the fridge that outlasted its owner, the things to be taken to auction, the things to be driven to the dump. At the funeral home, an embalmer might try to make the body look less dead, more sleeping. They deal with the things we cannot bear to look at, or so we assume. Our sky falling is their routine.
Thank you. Yeah, I love what you say, that we can't bear to look at, or so we assume, which is why you wrote the book.
We are frightened of something we know nothing about. And the whole point of my book was to try and see if it was as frightening as we believe it to be, or if we're missing something by letting other people take care of it. And I genuinely believe we are missing something huge. Death is a part of life, and I think it should be a part of our lives.
So in your introduction, you say that death is everywhere, but that it is veiled, which stunts our ability to grieve properly. Tell us all the way it's veiled. You just alluded to that, but how is it veiled?
Well, I think immediately once somebody's ill in hospital, I have friends who have been given the choice of coming to see that person who's unconscious and dying, and, do you want to come see them? And they say, oh, no, I don't want to. So even the actual dying bit is veiled. And as soon as a person becomes not a living person, but a dead person, they are given over to somebody else. You sign forms and deal with the admin of doing the funeral, while all the actual practical things of death are taken care of by other people. Everything is veiled. The curtain comes up and we just don't know. And behind that curtain are all these people doing these jobs. There's so much to do before a dead body is buried or burned, but we don't see it. And I think that if you don't fully understand what's happening, if you're given this blank space, and it happened with me when I was a kid, if you're given this blank space to fill with not real information, but stuff you've gleaned from movies and TVs and video game, you're just going to fill it with horrors. And I wanted to go and find out if those horrors are true, or if they are just fantasies that we've made up, or things that are true that we've exaggerated for, with our artistic license. And for the most part, they really are. But everything is veiled. And because of that, we just we fill the blanks ourselves. And I think that's damaging.
Okay. Well, yeah, because some of the things you described, well, not some, but a lot of what you experienced, I found horrifying. I couldn't do it, Hayley. I couldn't do it.
Me neither. But the people I spoke to, many of them said, I didn't think I could ever do this job. When I was growing up, I didn't think I could do it. But they are doing it. And they have found ways of getting it done in a way that doesn't hurt them. So dealing with very decomposed bodies might sound horrific to some people, but to, for example, Lara, who is she's an anatomical pathology technologist, who is basically the person who does all the practical part of an autopsy for the pathologist, so they can come in with their forms and things. But for Lara, she's not seeing a deeply decomposed body. She's seeing life and science taking over. She finds it really interesting seeing, what bacteria and creatures, insects that get involved in the decomposition process. She finds all of that fascinating. So she's not focusing on what we would focus on when we walk in and we see that. So people find a way, and it is astonishing how they do. And I think that, not to that extent, but similarly, we think that, oh, I wouldn't want to see a dead body. It's too much for me. I wouldn't want to. But my experience of seeing dead bodies, and I've seen too many to count now. I've seen hundreds, whole ones, fresh ones. I've seen decomposed ones, and I've seen pieces of people in the freezers of medical schools. None of them are as frightening as the things in your head. That is my overriding thought. None of them. And I grew up watching horror movies and all of these things, and none of these things compare, because when you get there, they're just a person.
I used to work at a switchboard. I was in my 20s, and it was at a kind of like a monastery or seminary or something.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the brothers came over and said, we have a deceased here. Would you like to come and view the body? And I was like, oh, God, no, I had never seen a dead body. And he was very upset. He said, there's nothing wrong with it. Why don't you come? And I don't know why he wanted me, a stranger, to come view the dead. Maybe it was some spiritual thing or whatever. But yeah, I didn't see it. I never saw a corpse until I was in my mid-20s, 30s, something like that. And it wasn't somebody I knew. So that was good.
That is good. That's rare too, I think.
It is rare. It's kind of sad, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, like I say in the book, my first dead body that I saw was a stranger to me. I helped dress him at the funeral home. And I genuinely think that the funeral director who allowed me to join in with that gave me this special gift of being able to practice, to help process this thing in my head before I actually have to do it in real life with somebody I love. I think that's huge. And no way does everybody get that chance. And it's not even a thing that people are aware that it's something they should think about. We avoid dead bodies. But I found when my book came out in August in the US, I took part in various call-in shows, the kind that we don't really have over here, like late night American call-in shows. I love them. They're like from Frasier or something. But I found so many people calling in to tell me about dead bodies in their life that stick with them in their minds. And a lot of them were old men telling me about stillborn babies their wives had 60 years ago. And there was one, he was in his car and he was telling me about this baby who had been born 60 years ago. He was telling me the color of her eyelashes, they were ginger. And it's like all of this stuff was right up front, and he really wanted to talk about it. But what chance do you ever get to talk about how you feel and what this thing that happened to you, especially with babies? Everybody keeps it in. So I found that many, many more people than you think have been around dead bodies and have experienced this. It's just they don't really get the opportunity to talk about it. And a phone in with me was like rolling out the carpet. I loved it. You got all sorts of stories from all kinds of people. They're ready to talk about it if you give them the chance.
Yeah. I'm thinking of the part in Harry Potter where only people who have seen dead people can see these odd creatures that pull the carriages.
Yeah. Yeah, you do feel changed didn't you find that once you'd seen one? Didn't you feel like you'd changed? You could see it everywhere?
I felt initiated.
Yes.
Like, this is a part of life, and it's about time you've seen a dead person, really.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you talk about, you say that grieving would be enhanced if we had more contact with the dead. And there's something called natural burial. Do they have that over?
They do.
Okay.
Well, for me, the point I was making about grieving, I find it very hard to process things if I'm not able to see them or take part in them. And maybe it's from being a journalist and having to check things out for myself. But I grew up in Australia, which means that I have a lot of friends and family in Australia. I live in London now. But when people die, and I've got friends from school who have died of cancer or suicide, I find out they've died, and then that's it. I don't get to go to their funeral because it's so far away, but I'll still think of things. Oh, I want to send this to that person. And then the second thought is, oh no, they died 3 years ago. But there was nothing, there was no, tradition, no ceremony for me. And that's because I'm long distance. But here in the UK, it's not that much different if somebody dies in the same city as you. You go to the funeral, but it's just a box in front of you. And I think that now, thanks to my experience dressing the dead man who I didn't know, I'm going to be adamant about dressing dead family members, because it's not just seeing is believing. It's that, but it's also the final thing you can do for them. It's like when you're dropping a kid off at the school gates, you make sure their shoes are done up before they run away. You're making sure they're okay before they're taken away from you forever. And I find it incredibly profound, incredibly touching. And we are missing out by not being there. And we're not even told you're allowed to be there. You are. But I think funeral directors deal with grieving people all the time, and grieving people are extra touchy. And I think sometimes even suggesting, do you want to be a part of this, is a touchy subject, because you're talking about the dead body again. And I think people should know that you can ask and you can be there, and probably they will help you do it. I've now become kind of evangelical about it. As soon as somebody I know, my friend's grandpa died the other day, I said, he was frightened. He said, I've never seen a dead body. I did read your book. And so now I feel like I should. And so I'm phoning you to ask what I should do. And he was kind of looking for an out, I think. But he knew what I was going to say. He said, I don't know why I'm calling you. I know what you're going to say. I said, you do. And you should go. And I think you'll regret it if you don't. And he did go. I think that's now my job, I think, to encourage people, to tell them that it's not as scary as they think it's going to be, and that they might gain something from it.
So who is Poppy Mardell, and what did she say about shock that impressed you?
Poppy Mardell is an independent funeral director here in London. She's in her 30s. And she was the one who invited me to her funeral home to dress the dead man. And I went to see her because she gave a talk. And in that talk, she said that the first dead body you see shouldn't be someone you love. And I'd never thought about that. And I thought she's right. And I wanted to go and talk to her more about that. But she also said that she wanted to bring children into her mortuary to help them process what death is before they have to. And she said that you need to be able to separate the shock of seeing death for the first time from the shock of grief. Because if you finally get to see a dead body and it's your mother and you're in your 50s, so much of that is going to be taken over with, oh my goodness, this is a dead body. You're not going to be thinking, this is my mother. You will be thinking that too. It's all this emotional mess. But if you're able to come to terms with what a dead body is like, then I think that you can focus on your loss. And that helps, it's not you don't have the fear of the unknown of this, my mother is now this thing that I know from horror movies. It's two different things, I think. And I'm sure many people will disagree with me, but I think it's helpful to deal with one that you can deal with now, the actual practicality of what a dead body is, before you have to deal with loss and grief, which I think is a much deeper and longer process.
Well, certainly this applies to, I don't know if first world, third world, I don't know if that's politically incorrect these days, but industrialized countries like Great Britain and America, certainly that's a problem. But in many other parts of the world, little kids are exposed to death all the time.
Yeah. Well, this is what privilege has bought us, the ability to separate ourselves from dead bodies. And in a way that is good, and in another way, it's not so good. Because we can afford to be separate from them. That's how we've done it. And we keep getting further and further apart. But I think we need to stop and think about what we're missing. I talk in the book about a woman I met just in the gym, just a stranger in the gym. I don't know what happens in the sauna at the gym, but people always elevate small talk to big talk within seconds. And so this nude, sweating lady was telling me about how her mother was dying in hospital, had died in hospital, and she had been given the chance to go and sit with her. But she said, I don't want the last image I have of her to be one where she's sick or dead. So I didn't go. And she let her mother die alone. And that stuck with me because she was putting her own fear in front of, I don't know how conscious her mother is, but I couldn't live with the idea that I had let my mother die alone in hospital. What if she was lonely? What if she knew I wasn't there? I couldn't do that to a cat or a dog. You know, when I know people who have just given their dog to the vet and said, you put him down, I'll wait in the car. It's not for your benefit that you're there. You have to be with them because this is their last moment. So it is like the life jacket thing. Once you're okay with death, once you know that you can be around it and you're not as frightened as you thought you might have been, you can be helpful. You can be the person, you're not just bringing the lasagna around to the grieving family, although they will take lasagnas. You can actually help them do other things, help them dress their dead family if they need someone to hold their hand. I feel much more prepared now, and I specifically feel much more prepared to help my sister who will fall apart. She won't know what to do. So I feel like my job is to be the one who is stronger than the others.
So your book is almost an ode to all those people who deal with death for us.
It is. I've always been interested in unseen workers. The world would not work with the people that we, working in the sewer that we don't think about, or out in the fields picking fruit. And people who deal with our dead are a huge part of everyday life, and we don't think about them. And that was a constant refrain when I was talking to them. The embalmer said that he's your best friend for 2 weeks. And then you go back to ignoring him. And he goes back to, he doesn't even tell people at parties what he does for a living, because if you say you're an embalmer, it's kind of a mood killer. But once you need them, they are your everything for a couple of weeks, and then they disappear again. You are so close. You're working so closely with these people. They are doing something so intimate for you. And then that's it. Again and again, I kept finding that people just wanted to be, they didn't even want acknowledgement. They didn't even get into this to have awards or be acknowledged or be celebrated in any way. But I think it's wrong that they're not. And it really stuck out when in the early days of the pandemic, we had that thing where people went onto their doorstep and they were clapping and banging pots and pans for the nurses and the doctors. And I was thinking, I bet none of you are clapping for the funeral director who is currently overwhelmed and has no storage space and is hiring extra trucks. And I'm still in contact with the people in my book, and that was a horrible period of their lives. Lara, who did the autopsies, was put up in a hotel across the road from the hospital because she was on call all the time. And to get into work, she had to go through crowds of people chanting that COVID wasn't real. And I think this is one of those, you cannot deny the bodies, but they can't see them. So I do want them to be celebrated. I do hope that in doing this book, they feel seen. I occasionally get emails from people who work in the death industry saying they liked it, and also that they didn't know that various jobs existed. They work within the death industry and they didn't know about this and they didn't know that. I got an email from somebody the other day who's been a funeral director for 45 years in New York, and he read it just to find something wrong with it. And he emailed and he said, I couldn't find anything. Well done.
Well, Hayley, thank you so much. Thank you for your time, for your book. We've covered a lot. Is there anything that you'd like to add that we didn't talk about?
No, this has been good. Thank you for setting it up.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And good luck with everything else and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.